I am joined by Robert Griffin III, James White, Field Yates Meanekeims.
All right, so first play we're going to look at, 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays.
What's going on, everyone? Mike Kadlick, Taylor Kyles here for CLNS Media outside of Gillette Stadium as the Patriots just wrapped up day 5 of their 2024 training camp. A drama-filled one. We're going to get to all of it. Matthew Judon, Davon Godchaux, Drew Rosenhaus was here. Quarterbacks, wide receivers, ups and downs. A trench report. My eyes were all on the offensive defensive line today as Taylor was on the skill positions and quarterback, so I'm going to rely on him for that. He's going to rely on me for the offensive and defensive line. So we're going to get to, teamwork. It makes the dream work. We're going to get to all of it, but first, a reminder, we are powered by Game Time. If you want to go to a Patriots game this year, head over to Game Time. Use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. You can get preseason, mid-season, maybe even postseason, depending on what happens as the Patriots roll on today. I don't know if it's going to happen, but we're going to start with the drama. We're going to start with the off-field stuff because we have to, and that was the headline. Most notably, Matthew Judon. In the middle of a contract dispute with the team. He talked about it. He was going to, as we were just talking about, before we came on, Mike Garafolo from NFL Network saying Judon intended to participate in the Patriots offseason, or in training camp, rather, in good faith. But it seems that patience has wore thin. He came out here prior to practice, did his whole playing catch with the fans thing, being the, the fun-loving number 9 Matthew Judon, but he wasn't even wearing that number 9 jersey. Yeah. No pads in the first fully padded practice. He then doesn't stretch, doesn't participate in the, the stretch period. Speaks with head coach Drake Maye, heads inside. Looks like he basically got, say, if you're not going to participate, you're not going to practice. Then he comes back out, talks with some executives in Elliott Wolf and Macro, and then heads back out again. So a lot of drama here. An animated discussion with the front office team for Matthew Judon, who, again, is looking for a new contract. And it doesn't seem like things are going very well on that front. So, Taylor, what do you make of the Judon stuff before we get to Godchaux and the rest of it?
It's just a really weird situation. Yeah. And it's really weird because, look, I'm all for players getting what they're worth. If Judon wanted to hold out, hold in, what have you, to get the money that he deserves, like if you look at his contract, the guy's making like $10 million. And a lot of the guys that are kind of in his range of productivity are making at least like 17. So I understand that he wants more money. The way he's gone about it, though, today was very odd. This is someone who held in last season, but even when he did it, was still in uniform. He had his helmet. He would just kind of be off to the side, similar to what we saw from Davon Godchaux back during minicamp, and he kind of just minded his own business. It wasn't really a distraction. Today was completely
distraction
different.
Central.
He comes onto the field without any uniform, like in a hoodie and a hat, which usually you see from players who are injured. So when he came out at first, I'm thinking, well, he must be injured because this is someone who said he didn't like holding in last season, said it was trash. Also told us last week or 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, that, I will play my contract because I have to, was very political. And, we've had Greg Bedard report things like, he's saying that publicly, but it's not what he feels. Judon is always vocal about saying, hey, if you didn't hear from me, I didn't say it. But today,
I don't run my Twitter account.
All that stuff, and fun-loving Judon. But today was a total 180 between coming outside of uniform. Then he had a conversation for a while with Drake Maye while stretches were going on. Drake Maye had his mouth covered. They were having a conversation. Didn't look like anything crazy. But then once he got into position drills, Judon followed the edge rushers and was like sitting on a trash can. Then Drake Maye came over again. They had another conversation. This one started to get animated where Maye looked like he was instructing Judon of something. Judon started to, his hands were kind of going up, and he clearly didn't look happy and walked off the field, clearly disgruntled. Came back onto the field, this time outside of the hoodie, wearing just a T-shirt and sandals. Again, just a look you don't really see, especially from a player who isn't injured. Then, like you said, he had that conversation with Elliott Wolf and Matt Groh and left the field again. I just don't understand. This is a player who's a leader on this team, someone who a lot of guys look up to, and this is a new regime led by someone who coached you for multiple seasons in Drake Maye, and to make a scene the way he did. Mike Giardi mentioned in his article posted on the Boston Sports Journal, make sure to check that out, that this is something that sometimes happens behind the scenes, but doesn't usually happen in front of fans, in front of media. It was just a bad look from the get-go, which is why I assumed that he was injured, but now we know it was actually a hold-in. I just don't understand what the idea was and what Judon was thinking was going to happen from this, and I don't know how they move forward, but I wonder if there's going to be any kind of repercussions, because I don't want to say this was conduct detrimental, but again, you're talking about something that just blew blew up and is now the main thing that we're talking about as reporters on the first padded day of practices. So, yeah, just really odd behavior for Matthew Judon, an odd situation in general. And, you know, I'm someone who usually doesn't like this kind of stuff, but I'll be on the edge of my seat waiting to see how he responds in Javon Maye and the rest of this new regime.
Yeah, Taylor definitely not one for the drama, so it kind of stinks that we have to start this one off with that instead of, you know, scheme and things like that. Unlike you said, the first day of padded practice, where that's all we want to focus on is the actual football, which Javon Maye, you know, opened up his pre-practice thing, his pre-practice press conference with saying, you know, it's time to get back to the real football. But Judon obviously takes away from that. You mentioned, too, what you already said, and I think that's a really good point. And the difference between what we've seen here with the Patriots now in this new regime versus the old Bill Belichick era, where as much as they were kind of everyone thinks Belichick was, you know, cheap and they didn't want to, you know, give out the contracts and yada, yada, all those kind of talking points. The one thing you never saw was a player do this in front of everybody. They always kind of handled this stuff behind closed doors. Keep
everything in house.
Yes, keep it in house. Judon wouldn't have came out and done this. Frankly, if Belichick was running the ship, I don't think they usually handled it. Like, he wouldn't have even touched the field, is I guess my point. They wouldn't have, you know, let it spill out like this. So
kind of felt like testing boundaries a little bit, which again is just really odd for a player who's about to turn 32 years old. Yeah, just a weird situation. Sorry to cut you off.
No,
but
you're fine.
That's what it felt like.
It was just odd, and it was something where, like, the Godchaux thing, and which we'll get to, and I kind of want to go through that now because that felt like something that would, the way it happened was how it would happen under Belichick, where he's out here, he's participating. If he's not going to participate, which again, it was injury a couple weeks ago, but he didn't even show up on the field. That was the sort of hold-in that I thought it was at that point. And then, obviously, Drew Rosenhaus shows up. Let's get into Godchaux. Yeah. Godchaux's also looking for a contract. His agent, Drew Rosenhaus, shows up to practice today, has a conversation with Macro and Elliot Wolf, and then Godchaux participates. He's here. It seems like that one's close to the finish line, that they're actually going to get that one done. That happened a couple of years ago. I remember being here 2 years ago. I believe it was 2022. Rosenhaus was here. They get Godchaux's other 2-year extension done. That's kind of how it works here, around here. I guess I'm not really sure where I'm going with this. Basically, that felt like a Belichick situation, and Godchaux's again, Rosenhaus shows up, and it seems like that one might be close.
Yeah, so that was a situation that probably still would have grabbed headlines if it weren't for the Judon thing, because, again, this is an agent who's publicly having some kind of conversations with the team. Initially, Drew Rosenhaus, and I believe it was his brother, they were speaking to Matt Groh in the Friends and Family section. So if you're wondering why there wasn't any video or pictures like you saw with Judon, we're not allowed to take any type of, or record or, you know, take pictures of any kind of content in that area. Later on, Robin Glazier also joined and had some discussions, and then Javon Maye at the end of practice. But Davon Godchaux showed up without any lower body pads, so we were all thinking, oh, is this going to be another hold-in? But like you said, he was a full participant, and the only session that he's missed since minicamp when he did hold in was due to some tightness, as we heard from Javon Maye. So like you said, hopefully that means that they're inching close to some kind of deal getting done, but not nearly as much of a distraction. I don't think it was a distraction at all relative to Matthew Judon's situation, but yeah, I guess we're maybe inching towards a resolution on the Godchaux front is really what I took away from that.
Yeah, again, Rosenhaus speaks with the front office before practice. Godchaux goes out there, fully participates, so I'll get to it in the trench report. He was there in one-on-ones. He participated in 7-on-7s. And then after practice, Rosenhaus, Maye, and Godchaux talk to each other again, like a normal professional would, and Judon's was just the complete opposite. So I'm very curious to see how both play out. Again, two important pieces along this defensive line that, you know, hopefully get it along.
Also, speaking of outside linebackers, edge defenders, and Drew Rosenhaus clients, Joshua Uche actually got kicked out of practice today, got into a scuffle with Chuks Okorafor. Okorafor seemed to miss 1 rep of practice and then went back in pretty quickly after, but Uche ran off the field, so it was kind of ironic. You know, you have those two guys that have their whole drama from before practice, and then Uche barely participates. So yeah, just want to throw that one
It was a drama-filled practice, but that's kind of the gist of it, where, you know, Judon, Godchaux, Uche all have their all have their tiffs throughout the practice. Well, let's get to the real football. Because the quarterbacks, wide receivers, real football, 2 positions that we want to talk about, that we always want to talk about here with the Patriots. Quarterback, wide receiver, offensive line. I'll get to the offensive line in the trench report. Taylor, I want to kind of kick it to you to tell me and tell the folks at home what you saw. We'll start with the quarterbacks. From what I was able to glean, from what I heard from other reporters, and kind of when I took my eyes off the trenches, one of Jacoby Brissett's best days and one of Drake Maye's worst days. So what did you see from number 14? What did you see from number 10? Where do you think the gap is between that quarterback competition and who starts week 1?
Yeah, Jacoby's definitely pulled ahead over the past couple of days especially. Now, he was clearly the starter when we started training camp. But, Drake Maye was still performing pretty well. Jacoby wasn't doing anything really spectacular. But today, the reason I think it was his best day was not only was he accurate, not only was he making the right reads, and there were no really jarringly negative plays, but he also actually aired it out for the first time that we've seen in training camp. One of his first downfield throws was to Javon Baker, which was really exciting to see. Javon Baker finally getting quality reps with the first offense. Right? Yeah, we saw it in one-on-ones when he was working with Jacoby, but this time it was during 7-on-7s where we saw Baker get some action. He was targeted on a corner route that looked like a good ball from Jacoby Brissett. I couldn't quite see from where I was, but it was obvious that Baker completely stretched out to make the catch near the sideline. Wasn't able to secure it as he came up without the ball, but still a good effort. You just want to see him be able to finish. Later on, actually, Javon Baker and Jacoby Brissett did connect. Wasn't a great ball from Brissett, I'll be totally honest. It kind of hung up there a little bit. But Baker, like he's done throughout training camp and really the entire offseason, made a spectacular play going up to get it and boxing out Jalen Hawkins as he tried to disrupt the pass after having already beaten Alex Austin. Bit of an up-and-down day for Javon Baker. He also had a drop on a slant, but the flashes are consistently there. You just want to see him tighten it up. And then Tyquan Thornton also caught a couple deep balls.
Padded Tyquan.
Padded Tyquan. Now, there wasn't a whole lot of physicality on these reps, just to be totally transparent, but the fact that Tyquan was able to track the passes over his shoulder, similar to Javon Baker yesterday, kind of looking like a baseball player out there, and they were able to connect was pretty huge. So Jacoby Brissett pushing the ball downfield successfully and working the underneath part of the field. I thought he had a really strong start to these padded practices.
So I mentioned padded Tyquan sort of as a joke because that's kind of what we mess around with, saying, he comes out here, he shines during the early periods. Obviously, he's had a good offseason program the last 3 years and has struggled once the pads come on, whether he's gotten hurt, whether he has the lack of physicality. From what you saw today from number 11, do you think he helped his chances of ultimately making this team? Can he get over the hump? Do you think him adding weight like he talked about, I believe it was yesterday when we talked to him, do you think it's made a difference? Again, I know it's only one day, so there's not basically trying to glean what you saw from 11 today in the full pads.
It's hard to know for sure. Also, one thing for Jacoby Brissett, I wanted to throw in, he also had a really cool connection with Jalen Polk, where there was some pressure up the middle. Jacoby stepped up, threw off platform over the middle, and Jalen Polk made the catch with some defenders closing in. So that was really cool. I wanted to make sure I didn't forget that. But with Tyquan, with him, for me, it's always about stacking positive days together. We've seen the flashes. I want to see him do it repeatedly. And like I mentioned, on those reps, there wasn't a whole lot of physicality. He kind of got right behind his guys, and really it was more about tracking and coming down with the catch. Now, those are still very important. They're things we haven't seen Tyquan do consistently. But yeah, I think it's too soon for me to say, buff Tyquan in pads is starting to look like that guy. We still got to see him stay on the field, and we still got to see him make plays on a somewhat consistent basis. But again, as we always say in these practices, credit to him for having a strong performance.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so that's Jacoby Brissett. That's the two young receivers. Let's get to Drake Maye. An erratic day. I thought he was inaccurate at times, had some trouble like we talked about earlier in our stand-up, which you should check out on Patriots Press Pass. Some problems processing, I guess. It wasn't, I guess, fully clicking in his head. So what did you make from Maye today? I asked you earlier. I'll ask you again in this one. Do you think he hurt his chances at all starting week 1? And are you worried about Drake Maye yet having a kind of an erratic day 5 here in Patriots camp?
Not worried about Drake Maye after the first day in pads. Yeah, not quite. Not quite getting a bust stare yet. But we did see the processing looked like it was sped up more for him than it has been in other practices. I praised him for his ball security and for consistently seeming like he's finding the open receiver. Didn't see that as much today, especially with the accuracy. That was one where, the past 2 days, I feel like his accuracy is starting to regress a little bit, just in terms of how consistently he's putting the ball on his receivers in places where they can make catches in stride and not have to make tough adjustments. He had one throw in the dirt. I believe it was to Juju Smith-Schuster. A couple of throws over the middle. One was just high. I don't know who it was supposed to go to. There was another one that looked like it may have been a miscommunication with David Wallace. And I will say, also, I'll throw in, he had an interception, Drake Maye, on a pass that was behind Mitchell Wilcox, though the receiver probably could have done more to fight for the ball. Kyle Duggar ended up breaking up and intercepting the pass. Now, all of that said, Drake Maye was far from perfect. There weren't a lot of moments that stood out as true, like, standout positives. But he was repping with some of the players near the bottom of the roster, even though he was right behind Jacoby Brissett, which I found kind of odd. You could tell there wasn't a lot of chemistry with those guys. That offensive line was also letting up pressure much faster than Jacoby Brissett's offensive line, which seemed like he was consistently in the pocket comfortably, and that allowed him to make some of those throws downfield. Now, Drake Maye was under pressure pretty quickly. It looked like he may have missed a blitz on one play and kind of tried to compensate and didn't find anybody open. But yeah, open receivers weren't really very common in this session. Again, pressure was an issue. So while Drake Maye did have one of his worst practices of this offseason, I think it's also got to be mentioned that there wasn't a lot going on around him that set him up for success.
Sounds similar to what we saw from Mac Jones the last couple of years. I'm kind of stealing your idea, talking about what we talked about on our stand-up, but yeah. Mac Jones wasn't surrounded with a good offensive line. He wasn't surrounded with a good, a good arsenal of pass catchers for the 3.5 years that he was in Foxborough, and it looks like that's kind of the reason Drake Maye struggled today. Now, would he have gone out there and shined if he was behind the same offensive line as Jacoby Brissett and with the same pass catchers? Who knows? We'll have to wait and see, but I think it's clear that Jacoby is quarterback one right now, and that Drake Maye is going to have to really fight and really have a good next couple weeks out here to prove that he can be quarterback one.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you talk about the pre-snap penalties. Now, that's not always on the quarterbacks. There are some times where you'd like, your quarterback to make sure that everybody's on the same page. But there were a lot of false starts today. I had Ramondre Stevenson, Chukwuma Okorafor, and Caedan Wallace actually had a false start on the same play. Then I believe Tyrone Wheatley Jr. as well had a false start. It was a pretty sloppy day for the offense overall, honestly. The top unit looked really solid, but there were just some not so great moments all around kind of scattered about this practice. So it wasn't just Drake Maye. There were a lot of things that could have been cleaned up. Also had drops from one, at least from Javon Baker, one from Jalen Polk on a pass that may have just gotten on him pretty quickly. But yeah, overall, just not the best day for the Patriots offense overall.
We'll get to some more of those mistakes along the offensive line in the Trench Report. We're also going to touch on the defense, special teams, and then wrap this thing up with some final thoughts on Day 5 heading into Day 6. But first, a quick word from our friends over at Game Time. We'll be right back. The dog days of summer here in Boston, which means it's time to get to some games over at Fenway Park. This baseball season, I'm using Game Time to land my Red Sox tickets. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace in Major League Baseball, which means getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. It's super easy. You just open the app, click sports, and the games will be right there for you. Right now, you can get tickets to the Rollin' Red Sox for as low as $11. You can even buy parking for the game and check out your seat view right in the app. With Game Time, you can save up to 60% by buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy shows, theaters, and more. Get the lowest price guaranteed, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. That's Game Time. Head over to Game Time. Use CLNS as your code for $20 off your first purchase. Those terms apply. All right, like I said before, I've gassed it up enough. I've talked and tweeted #Trench Report enough here.
I'm excited.
I watched the offensive line and defensive line today, so we're going to get into everything that I saw from those two units. But first, we have to talk about some unfortunate news along the Patriots' defensive front, and that's Christian Barmore, who missed the last couple days of practice. It was reported by Mark Daniels early on that he was under the weather. Unfortunately, that turned out to be blood clots. So the Patriots released a statement yesterday saying that there's no current timetable for his return, but they're looking for him to make a full recovery. He was obviously sent into Mass General Brigham to be treated and diagnosed with those blood clots. His trainer, Nicole Lynn, also
agent.
What did I say? Trainer?
Trainer, yeah. There's trainers involved in the story. Yeah.
The agent, Nicole Lynn, gave credit to the trainer, Jim Whalen, for his awesome treatment of Barmore. They kind of caught it right away, or as right away as they could, and that they talked about David Andrews going through a similar situation a couple years ago. He unfortunately missed the whole season, so we'll have to wait and see what happens with Barmore there. But again, some great work from the Patriots training staff, obviously the people over at Mass General as well. So we obviously wish Barmore a massive not a massive recovery, but to have
as big as he can
a
recover.
massive and quick recovery here. Patriots obviously have to worry about what they're going to do on the football field as well. They signed some backup defensive line help yesterday in Josiah Bronson. There's obviously stuff going on with Davon Godchaux and the rest of the defensive line. So another sort of wrinkle added to what's going on in the Patriots defense.
Yeah, and Drake Maye also said that he's in good spirits, Christian Barmore. He is out of the hospital, and he mentioned his mom's here, so he's getting tremendous care as well. But yeah, when you do have to face the potential reality of being without Barmore for any type of stretch during the regular season, you have to look at the depth chart and say, okay, who's going to potentially step up for Barmore if he misses time? I've seen some people mention that maybe it accelerates Godchaux's process. I don't really think they have anything to do with each other.
Yeah.
Now, Barmore does spend a good amount of time at nose tackle, but it's a different role. Now, Christian Barmore is that true zero technique on rundowns. He's a space eater, run stopper. Usually, when it comes to Barmore, he is the defensive tackle with a 3 or 4 technique who's between the guard and the tackle, really gives you both the run defense and pass rush. So when you think about, okay, who's going to potentially replace him, I think Daniel Aquale is at the top of that list. He's who we saw taking most of what would be Barmore snaps, as he has been over the past few sessions that Barmore has unfortunately missed. And then behind him, obviously, Armon Watts, who I know that you're going to mention it, but had a bit of a tough day, not really successful in one-on-one drills, but he did flash consistently as a rotational player for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'd also potentially throw Jeremiah Farms into that mix.
Yeah.
He's been more of a nose tackle backing up Davon Godchaux, but he brings run defense and pass rush upside. So again, that two-phase kind of thing that Barmore gives you. And then in pass rush situations, I'd say Keion White and Dietrich Wise are guys to look out for if they want to get some heat from the interior. But whoever is used to, take over the snaps that Barmore's leaving on the field, no one's replacing him. I think Barmore asserted himself as one of the best defensive linemen, not just on the interior, I think period in the NFL. That kind of talent is something that you're going to miss. It's just going to be a committee approach to try to get some level of the production you got with him on the field. So obviously, once again, wishing Barmore the absolute best. Hope he gets back on the field as soon as he physically can. Just a tough loss for a Patriots.
Tough situation. Like you said, a guy who has kind of made himself into one of the best defensive tackles, frankly, in the NFL, just signing a 4-year, upwards of $92 million contract extension. And yesterday was his 25th birthday, too. So getting that news, obviously, it like we said, it's a tough situation. We hope the best for him and see what happens along the Patriots defensive front along the way. So that's point number 1 on the defensive front for the Trench Report. Also, I noted it in the article, which you can read on CLNSmedia.com, but more moving stuff around the defensive line is the fact that Matthew Judon wasn't out here and Davon Godchaux is kind of in a contract dispute. Now, Godchaux, obviously, we already hit on it. He was out here, he was participating, and he played pretty well as well. But, those are a couple of things to note as well. Offensive line, I'm just going to go through my news and notes here, and I'll let you react to it as well. But David Andrews wasn't out here. A notable absence, I would say, but it also kind of feels like just maybe a Veterans Day off. Maybe he's, banged up a little bit under the weather. But Nick Leverett comes in and has a great day at center, number 51, who has been that primary backup for David Andrews. Earlier in the offseason program when we were here in the spring, it was Antonio Mafi, but Leverett has sort of taken over that role. And especially with Mafi having a couple botched snaps up here, Leverett really took over that role today. And he looked solid. I had him for in 4 one-on-one drills. He had 3 wins, no losses, and a draw. The draw was against, I believe,
Godchaux?
It was Davon Godchaux. So he draws against Davon Godchaux, like, that's okay.
Yeah.
If you're having a solid, again, a draw is tough to kind of figure out in a one-on-one drill, but they kind of both had each other there. So I gave him a draw. But outside of him, the same offensive line, at least at tackle and guard that the Patriots have had the last couple of days, with Caedan Wallace at left tackle, Sidy Sow at left guard, Mike Onwenu at right tackle, and Chuks Okorafor at right, or Onwenu at right guard, and Okorafor at right tackle. So some similar, I guess, a similar look there. I feel like that's what they want to do here, is have those 4 guys and then David Andrews down the middle. Kind of be that moving forward. Before I get to the rest of it, what do you make of that being the offensive line the last 3 days? And do you think they're going to continue that? And what do you think those 5 have shown overall?
Yeah, this is the first time I think we've seen the same offensive line 3 days in a row the entire offseason. So, yeah, I think that's pretty significant. Again, I've mentioned it. I like Caedan Wallace better on the right side just because of Chuks Okorafor's skill set. But at the same time, if this is a group that maybe they're seeing on tape behind the scenes and they're like, yeah, they're working pretty well together, I think that's absolutely awesome. Also cool to see Nick Leverett have some success. Yeah. He was one of the Patriots offseason award winners, someone someone that I've been saying, hey, watch out for this guy. I really like his power, his aggressiveness, his versatility as well. He spent some time at guard and center, and even a little bit at tackle for the Buccaneers in 2022 with Tom Brady. So good to see him step in for David Andrews. Not sure what the case is there, but yeah, I think it's a positive sign to see more continuity on that offensive line, which obviously, even Drake Maye said ideally they'll have their offensive line combination figured out by the third preseason game. So as long as
feels a little late when he said that. I was like, come on, let's get this thing ready.
I hope he was kind of joking. I couldn't really tell from his tone. I'm not sure he was because he usually lays it on pretty thick when he does joke.
Right.
Yeah, but, again, continuity on the offensive line, always good.
Yeah, for sure. All right, some one-on-one notes from today from what we saw out there. Defensive lineman Dietrich Wise credited with the first win in one-on-ones this year. He beat Chuks Okorafor, who I'll get to a little bit later in 11-on-11s, but I thought the right tackle really struggled today where, we saw Caedan Wallace have a good day, and it's like, okay, now we have maybe our left tackle of the future in Wallace, but Okorafor on the right side struggles, so we'll see what happens with him. But Wise was quickly humbled. I don't know if you saw Mike Reese's tweet, but Layden Robinson, rookie, gives him a hand to the chest, and Dietrich had to literally stop himself and be like, whoa, that was...
That's saying a lot.
That says a lot
dude.
about a rookie a rookie guard. Getting his hand in and kind of stopping Dietrich Wise. So Layden Robinson had a win on him there. Nick Laravet, like I said, looked really good. Draw against Godchaux. Mike Onwenu had a nice win on the inside, stonewalling Keon White, who I didn't think White was great in one-on-ones, but he bounced back in 11-on-11s, which we'll get to. But no, he didn't really win. White didn't win anything in one-on-ones. I think Onwenu continued to look solid along the inside there. And then Caedan Wallace was great in one-on-ones. I don't think I had him for a loss. The term stonewall, I use it a bunch when talking about offensive linemen, but he literally looked like a stonewall. And I didn't think Caedan Wallace, maybe I just didn't see it right when watching some of his tape at Penn State and maybe when we saw him out here early in the offseason program. I didn't think he was that big of a dude. That guy's massive.
Oh, no,
we talked to him yesterday, and I was like, oh shit. They have a left tackle here. He looks it in one-on-ones as well, so good stuff from him. I didn't notice much from who did he beat? Oh, Wallace beat Josh Uche in the first one.
Oh,
pretty legit.
Okay.
Not bad.
That's not bad at all.
So, yeah, again, I didn't notice much from the edge rushers or the defensive linemen in one-on-ones. I thought overall the offensive line looked good. We got to 11-on-11s, and it got a little bit dicey, I would say. I thought the star of the day was O'Shane Jimenez, a guy who Taylor has talked about a lot. That could be a sneaky roster guy. I didn't have him on my first one. Yeah, fellow Queens guy. That's right, New York. He was the star of 11-on-11s. He beat Okorafor for a would-be sack. He also had a bunch of quarterback pressures, had a run stuff as well. And like I said with Okorafor, he wasn't great.
Yeah.
Wasn't great at all. Again, he lost to Jimenez. He lost one to Dietrich Wise. He also got in the fight with Uche. They let Okorafor stay throughout practice, which I think that goes to show that it was probably Uche's fault.
It was Uche either through the first punch or the last punch, whatever it was, he got caught. That's pretty much the cardinal sin when you get into a fight during these practices.
Yeah. Wallace, brick wall. Like I said, he looked solid. First NFL practice. First padded NFL practice to come out here and look like that on the left side to be potential left tackle of the future, I thought was massive. And again, grain of salt because it's first in one practice. But, I think it was a great start for him. The offensive line blocked up a nice inside run for Kevin Harris. He broke it for a long gain. They also executed a screen, and they held the defense long enough for, one of the first plays in, I think the first set of 11s was more of a run heavy, and then the second set was pass heavy. They held up first for a nice completion to Hunter Henry, which I thought was good. Again, it's one play, so to kind of gas up one play, it's kind of like, oh, here we go. I feel like there was a lot of ups and downs on both sides of the football along the trenches. But, again, overall, ups and downs. I think as far as the run game, I feel like they're sort of adjusting to the new scheme. There was a couple outside zone runs that I thought were successful.
Yeah.
Pass rush was up and down. Again, Jimenez was good. It's tough to glean with Judon not being out here. I didn't think Uche did much, and then he gets kicked out of practice. Right. So ups and downs, but overall I think it was good to see those guys come out here in the first pad of practice and kind of show their stuff and give credit to the linemen on both sides because they don't really get to do anything until the pads come on.
Yeah, when it comes to the rookie offensive linemen, I'll say I wasn't shocked to hear that they were having success. Layden Robinson's whole thing is that he gets off the ball really quickly. He's got really long arms, and he's got a powerful punch. There were times watching his film, I had to pause and be like, did he false start? Because, he actually did have a false start today. But for the most part, he just gets off the ball so fast it looks like he's false starting, but really it's just his burst. So hearing that skill set was translating, that was very cool. The biggest concern for him is consistency is pass protector.
Right.
Really just in those one-on-one matchups because he's not as laterally explosive, so a lot of those speed guys can give him trouble. We'll see how he does for the most part. But it was good to see that he had a strong opening day. And then Caedan Wallace, another guy that didn't really surprise me because he's got a lot of experience. He's very, very patient, especially for a rookie walking into the NFL. And he mentioned that with Scott Peters' tutelage, he's really improved with his hand strikes using independent hands, which is huge, especially for the more talented edge rushers that he's going to see in the NFL. And he also mentioned not turning and opening as easily on the outside because sometimes, a guy like Caedan Wallace, what you saw a lot in college was he would kind of open himself up on the outside, which allowed speed rushers to create pressure on the inside of him. But now he said he's more patient, which gives him a little bit more flexibility to defend those inside moves. So because he's worked on what were two of his biggest flaws, I was excited to hear, okay, is he actually going to perform and is it going to translate to the field? And I also noticed in a lot of pass dropbacks, he did seem solid. I saw him lock up Dietrich Wise, didn't see him give up any pressure. And like you mentioned, I thought the outside zone scheme for this Patriots offense has looked way better than I expected. I was concerned, especially with Nwenu inside, about how effective they'd be considering there's so many big maulers on the offensive line. But I saw Layden Robinson opened up at least one cutback, might have been two during the run game period. There was a pin pull play that got a lot of positive yards. So the run game looked good. I know in terms of the offensive execution, one thing at the end of practice, the offense huddled together. I think they also did a lap, and we heard from Antonio Gibson. A lot of that was about not chasing the ball down after completions were made or after passes happened. So I also know that Austin Hooper said they wanted to be, or Gibson said they wanted to be more physical. Austin Hooper said that they weren't really as honed in on the technique as they wanted to be. So still a lot of room to clean up, but it was cool to see this run scheme that I had questions about show some positive signs early on.
Yeah, for sure. All right, that's the Trench Report. You can read it in in its entirety. Sometimes I can't talk on here. In its entirety on CLNSmedia.com. Published that just before we come on here live, so make sure you go check it out. We're going to wrap up with defense before we get out of here. I already mentioned my player of the day was Oshane Jimenez. I thought he was awesome. He got his reps with the first team, which I thought was surprising. Taylor probably didn't because he knows what that dude's made of. But a couple pass rush wins from him. Obviously one on Okora for it, another one, I forget who it was. But he looked solid. You mentioned that Alex Austin didn't have a great day. Tell me more.
Yeah, I think he gave up deep completions to both Javon Baker and Tyquan Thornton, so not a great look, especially considering that top defense that he was a part of has really been suffocating. Not, the end-all, be-all. Alex Austin's still a young player, a lot of room to develop. This is definitely probably not the best day that we've seen from him.
Alrighty. Anything else before we get out of here, Taylor?
I think. Brendan Schooler. We got a little bit of clarification on why he's playing so much defense. Drake Maye told us before practice that he doesn't really want the core special teamers to only play special teams. He wants them to have some understanding of how to play defense or whatever position they're most comfortable with. I mentioned, sometimes in end-of-game situations, if they're blowing a team out, if that ends up happening, or probably the other way around.
He said that. He was like, we're blowing a team out, haha.
Yeah, but I think it's just in those situations where you're kind of just putting guys in who are active. Maybe Brendan Schooler could get some snaps. He's also made some plays in his defense, so it was really interesting because we were wondering, are they moving away from the exclusive special teamer kind of label? And he mentioned that
on day one.
Exactly.
And it kind of came out today when we asked
And he mentioned that not everyone's Matthew Slater. For someone like him, and actually Alex Barth told us that it was 2017 when he actually started practicing exclusively special teams, because apparently he pulled a hammy as a receiver and then pretty much just came up with his own program to do on the side. So yeah, Drake Maye kind of getting rid of that exclusive special teamer role and trying to get those guys more involved on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, for sure. Shout out Alex Barth for kind of pulling that out of Mayo.
Thanks, buddy.
That was a good question. We appreciate you, Barthy. All right. That's it for day 5. Again, first day of fully padded practice with some drama, with some ups and downs from the quarterbacks, with some ups and downs in the trenches on offense and defense. What are you looking for in day 6 tomorrow on Tuesday before we head into an off day on Wednesday?
I want to keep a closer eye on the trenches myself probably tomorrow because I want to see Layden Robinson and Caedan Wallace, but also see if anybody comes back, if Judon's back, if Godchaux's back, or whatever. Honestly, that's probably the biggest thing. What the heck is going on with Judon? That's what I'm looking for tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to maybe not taking my eyes entirely off the offensive line, but I want to watch Drake Maye throw footballs again, and I want to watch these receivers catch the footballs again. My eyes were way too locked in on the left field and not much on the right field. So we'll see what happens there. I want to see if buff Tyquan and padded Tyquan is as good as advertised as it was today. So we'll be back on day 6 here. Actually, tomorrow's going to be a crossover episode with the Patriots Beat guys, so we'll have Brian Hines and Alex Barth on here. So make sure you tune in, rate, review, subscribe on Patriots Press Pass. Check out all of our written work on CLNSmedia.com. There's a trench report up there now. Taylor will have his observations up there shortly, so make sure you check it out. And until tomorrow, we'll see you next time. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Talk to you soon. Peace, y'all.